G'day guys, welcome back. Thanks for all the comments and likes and subscriptions and that, appreciate it. The last couple of weeks I've been working on the engine bay and the front end, just smoothing it all over, sanding and filling. Probably got about 45 hours in it. And I just put it in final coat of primer. I know I've got 45 hours in it because I keep a logbook. So yeah, I've done that from the start with this car, and just keeping a tab on how many hours I spent, how much money I spent, and yeah, it's been good actually, looking back on it. Anyway, today I'm going to take you through the modifications I've been making throughout the build. It started off, the concept probably about 10 years ago was I had the idea of building a phase 5. The XYs with the phase 3, then they made 4 phase 4s out of the sedans, the XA sedans. Only one was plated, and then according to Howard Marsden, who was in charge of racing back then, they were going to use the XA coupe as the phase 5, and so I thought, if the supercar scare didn't happen, what if Ford went all out? Anyway, I thought about that a fair bit and started heading down that road, and but then I found it was just a bit too limiting to what I wanted to do, and I thought I'm just going to upset a whole lot of people, and not that I really care, but I just thought, why go down that road? So I sort of still got that concept in the back of my head, what if Ford went, ape shit and built a road-going race car, So with that, I picked up this engine brace. It's actually off a 67, 68 Mustang. I picked it up, it's brand new. Picked it up about 8 years ago for like $50, and it doesn't fit, but I was going to modify it, but I just like the old look of it, sort of look factory style. Also got a Monte Carlo bar that runs across as well with it. But that started me thinking, okay, if I brace the shock towers, what am I actually bracing it against? And that's the Firewall. So I started thinking, if that is putting all the pressure on the Firewall, then what's this going to do to this? So that's what started me on the path of the modifications and trying to strengthen it and everything. So I'll put my head camera on and run you through. So I had to take the plenum off because it had bad rust all along this seam, in the corners where they usually go. So while I had the plenum off, I tried and figured out a way of strengthening that area and try and make it a beam across there. What led me down this path was that the factory already installed a rib inside here somewhere, and then doing research and going through photos and everything, I noticed that on the XCs they put an extra rib in here somewhere, and I thought, well, okay, that's what the factory's done, maybe that's the way it goes, probably to stop drumming, but yeah, I thought it's a good way to strengthen it. And so I made these ribs up. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there somewhere, or 4. And but I did a lot of research. I studied aeroplanes and boats and all sorts of stuff. And I'm no engineer or anything, but my old man was, and I ran that all past him. So the other thing about this seam as well is that this seam is 3 interconnecting panels: the firewall, the lower plenum, and then the upper plenum. And it's about 3 mil thick, almost 3 mil thick, probably 2.7, something like that, mil thick. So it's quite strong. I see a lot of people cut these off and just weld along. I'm not so sure that's such a great idea. You know, you're taking a lot of strength away there, and like I said, there isn't much. It's just the firewall and the plenum that holds this car together. So yeah, just something to consider. I have seen people do it, and it's always been a bit of a worry, I think. Anyway, yeah, so once I created that beam across there, I thought, okay, I decided to see what else I could do with these shock towers. So working with the plates that were already here, I just welded some tube in, and there was a cutout section here. I don't know why. I tested the front wheel and full absolute maximum travel as far as the control arms would go, and it didn't come, the tie didn't come anywhere near it, so I filled that in as well. I reinforced this area. There's a plate down here, bolts that is welded to the torque boxes. They were all rusted out, so I made up my own arrangement there rather than buy new ones. I had the steel tube, and I thought by the time I go and get them and mess about, I thought I'll just do this. So that strengthens that area. I also put this panel in, because I did it on the Landau's, and there's a few other cars they messed about with braces in here and that. So I thought, yeah, instead of just having this as the main connector from up there and there on the A pillar, I thought, yeah, that'll box it right in. I also had to do some rust repairs up in the windscreen A pillars as well. So I actually put some steel tube in there as well. Not a lot. I didn't go crazy. I just thought, yeah, and it helped with the repair too. So I did that as well. And I mean, these are a monocoque car, what they call a monocoque car, and the design originally came from aeroplanes. So I did a lot of research on aeroplanes, and I've always been interested in aircraft anyway. And basically any panel on this car on a monocoque is part of the strength. That's why I don't like cutting holes in any panels, because there's really not that much holding them together. And I just thought I'll try and work with that. So that's my idea behind this. I'm not going to say it's the most brilliant work, but it seemed to make sense. So next up, the sills were pretty well shot in this car. So I got the ones from Rare Spares. Didn't have any issues fitting them. They fit pretty good actually. A few little minor adjustments, but nothing great. But I thought the torque box is, I mean, that's almost 2 mil, I think, steel. And the Sill connects it to this rear tube torque box and the frame rail for the back of the car. So I thought I wanted to try and do something in here. I didn't want to run bar all the way through. Too much weight. I'm trying to keep the weight down. So again, I looked at all sorts of ideas. So I put a series of ribs through. Now they'll crush in a side impact, but they'll stop it, I'm hoping, flexing. So they were a fair bit of work, but they only added a kilo each side. I think it was nothing. So that was the idea behind the sills, and it was a lot of work to try and get them in there and make sure they fit and everything. And they're welded to the inner sill, the outer sill, the top of the sill as well. So that's like a beam, a really solid beam in there now. And fingers crossed, shouldn't be any problems. And I've tried to keep a lot of this hidden as well. I didn't want to be right out in your face with a lot of these modifications. So I've tried to keep it stealthy, if you know what I mean. And yeah, and the other thing, I wanted to run chassis connectors as well. So yeah, I wanted to also put in chassis connectors, but I wanted to make it look like the factory put them there. So there's some almost like seat braces or something. They come into about there, and they join up with these seat braces. So I took those off, I cut them, and I put it's only 1.5mm tube. I didn't go crazy with the thickness of steel in this car. I think most of it is 0.9mm, the panels, and some of it, like the inner sill and that, I think is 1.5mm. So I didn't go any thicker than what was used in the car. So I welded it. Plus I wanted to keep all the handbrake mechanisms in there too. So that's why I used, and it looks factory. You have to know what you're looking at to actually spot it. I connected them to this frame rail. So I put these connectors in. They're only just tacked there, fully welded there, but just tacked there in case, I don't know, there's an accident and the car folds or whatever. It should just rip them out. I know Alan Moffat ran these on his XC because I stuck my head under his car at the museum up at Bathurst, and I saw he connected it here too. So it just ties it all in. I also put these covers back on. This is just a flimsy cover, but I also welded in a brace here, and these were really beat up on mine, and so in here I also welded and just use these as covers to cover a tube in here as well, so add a bit of strength. And they follow through the floor pan and connect to the rear torque box and frame rail. I didn't want to cut the floor as little as possible, so the floor's only really cut here and a little bit here, so it can be returned to original if need be. I put a few extra welds in around here as well, but didn't go too crazy. And all this extra steel, including the plenum and the A-pillars and all that, there's about 16 kilos I've added. I weighed everything, so not too bad, and it's all low in the car and centralized, so it shouldn't affect handling too much. And if you're going to add weight, this is the best place to add weight. Yeah, so that's the chassis rails. Like I said, wanted to try and make them look stock, keep the handbrake mechanisms. At first glance, it looks original. Closer inspection, people will be able to pick it. On the inside, the chassis rail runs through the back footwell. Rather than just weld it to the floor, I made these plates and just plug weld them to it. Like I said, the floor's only cut here and here, so I don't sit in the back, so I don't care about leg room, and plus your feet go here anyway. So not my favourite way I would have done it, but it just made the most sense because it's a straight line. It just worked out as a straight line from front chassis to where it tags onto this torque box. The other thing I was worried about was that there seems to be like a fold point through here. If the car's in a front accident, the whole front end sort of goes up like that and the engine drops down. Again, I made this out of 1.5mm tube. That'll bend if it's something as catastrophic as that happens. And plus, I studied the XEs and XFs floor pans, which are almost identical. Even the architecture, the engine bay is almost identical, suspension and everything. But they do run a chassis rail. And I played with the idea of actually putting one of those chassis rails on. But the thing is, they run up over this footwell here and and connect here. The problem with that is on this coupe is that this footwell is actually lower than the sill, and you'll be able to see this from the side view of the car, and also it'll hang low too. I mean, it was only probably about that thick, but I worked out that the XFs and XEs, maybe XDs, their sills come deeper. They come up to about there, so you can't see it. But these sills are nowhere near as deep as those ones. So I figured, well, if Ford did it, then I should be able to do it. So, but yeah, it's a straight line from this chassis all the way through to there, and that's why I went through the footwell. It just seemed to be the best solution. So the other modification I did was this was all beat to hell, as most of them are. And on the 6 cylinders, this is a 6-cylinder car. It's only got a flat plate. The V8s had a bit of had this sort of arrangement. And I bought this off Howard Astel, and it's actually even stronger. It's got like a plate in there, so you can actually jack on this and without ruining it and denting it up. So I put that in, add a little bit of strength in and around. Yeah, I just did a few extra welds because there wasn't much from the factory, so like I said, I didn't go crazy. I did a few spot welds up there too, but basically just because there's a lot of pressure on these, they take all the braking forces, and yeah, and these are in pretty good nick. Mine were in pretty good nick, so little bits and pieces. I didn't go too crazy. I just wanted to keep it simple, neat, tidy. I didn't want it to be in your face. If you look hard, you'll see extra bits. If you know what you're looking at, you'll notice the differences. Again, I put on the inner sills, I put a couple of access holes, so you can get in there and clean all this out if it ever gets shit in there. I'm going to make covers for these, yeah, just to get access for rust proofing and cleaning them out, keeping an eye on them, making sure they're not rusting. Probably won't happen in my lifetime, but you never know. The other thing I did with the shock towers was a modification. They did it on the XE Cobras, about the first 30 or so, for homologation for racing. And this is an old trick that even goes right back to the Shelby Mustangs. And it's just a plate you weld in here at a 45-degree angle and it just braces the whole tower. You'll notice the extra holes because I've done the Shelby drop. They're the original ones there, and the bottom ones I've moved them slightly back for more caster. One of the best modifications you can make to the front suspension, really transformed the way the car turns into corners. I actually did that before I took the car off the road, and yeah, really transformed the way the car turns into corners. I tested the control arms. There's no fouling or anything like that. Again, I did a few extra welds around here. The factory had a couple, but they weren't very substantial, so I did a couple of extras in there. Like I said, I think that's one of my welds. That's a factory weld. That's my weld. That's my weld. Not sure about that one, but yeah. just wanted to brace the whole car off, do as good a job as I could. Another mod I did was, because I'm running a 345 tyre on this car, so on a 12-inch rim, so it fit, but it was going to scrub in a few places, so I just pumped the inside of the guard here because there was a hump, and I just slightly pumped the guards, not much, probably only about ½ an inch, if that. And Alan Moffat ran, if you look at close look at Alan Moffat's XCs, they have that sort of flared lip there. So that was another one I did, just to make sure it's got plenty of clearance now. Those tyres swim in there now. So that was a little bit of work, but well worth it. So that's just about wraps it up. That vid went a bit too long. I had to edit it a fair bit because I was just waffling on about nothing. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to explain what I've done, or anything you want to see again, or anything that you have questions about. Yeah, just ask in the comments, no problem. I'll get back to you. I read all the comments. Yeah, so now that the engine bay's done, and thank God all this fine sanding and all the nooks and crannies is done. I'm sick of using bits of sandpaper this size. My fingerprint doesn't work on my iPhone anymore. So now I'm going to move on to the roof, which isn't too bad. Be good to work on some flat panels for a change, and instead of sanding in all these, driving me crazy. So I'm glad that all that's done. And yeah, next video will be the roof, and I'll probably move on and show you other stuff, how I'm saving weight in the car. I've got quite a few bits and pieces. Like I said, I put probably 16 kilos of extra steel in the car, and I want to try and get that back. So I'll go through that. That's it. Stand by for rusty plenum photos. Cheers. So guys, this is what I found in the plenum. Actually, I didn't think the plenum was too bad when I first started looking it over, but as you can see, there was a lot of rust. I would say if you're going to do this, if you've got any rust in your seam along the engine bay, then you're going to have rust. It's a big job, but just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. And yeah, you'll get there. Like I said, big job to tackle, but well worth it in the end, making it all solid again, and just do it bit by bit and you'll get there. It's not that complicated. I see people cut the corners off, and just rather than take the whole plenum off, it's easier just to take the whole plenum off and do it properly. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the pics. Obviously I've braced all this off as well, so the car didn't fold in half, but yeah, it's a bit daunting, and I found heaps and heaps of seam sealer in there, especially in the corners. Unbelievable how much seam sealer they put in. Don't know why, because it's just a rust trap. But once you get those covers off on the corners and everything, it really opens it all up. So, okay, thanks for looking. Cheers. And remember, don't be scared, have a go. I'm no expert. Just get stuck into it. First time I've done it, and it worked out well. See ya.